How's it going, everybody? I'm going to try out a new series talking about the games I've beaten in the previous month, and as always, yeah, I'm a little bit late. I'll be leaving timestamps in case you want to skip to a specific game, and yeah, that's it. So here we go. Alright, so we're going to start off with the half genie herself, Shantae. This is Risky's Revenge, the director's cut. I've been a big fan of WayForward for quite a few years now. Loved some of their games like The Mummy Demastered, Boy and His Blob for the Wii, Scorpion King Sword of Osiris is a game I reviewed for the Game Boy Advance. They also did Contra 4, but somehow I'd barely put any time into their flagship series, which would be Shantae. Best Buy had some of the physical Shantae games on sale the other day for like 17, 18 bucks, so I picked up a couple. I figured, I haven't played them yet, why not? Risky's Revenge is the second official release in the series. It was released for the DS, and no, there is not a physical copy of it. This is the first time there has been a physical copy of Risky's Revenge. Interestingly though, you had the original Shantae on the Game Boy Color, and then mysteriously it skipped the Game Boy Advance generation. And yeah, it's true that Shantae was one of the last games released for the Game Boy Color, even bleeding over into the Game Boy Advance era. And then there was no release during that era, and then this came out for the DSi. And what ended up happening is that Shantae did not sell very well on the Game Boy Color. It was distributed by Capcom, and when they were working on the Game Boy Advance follow-up, which is called Risky Revolution, apparently they couldn't find anybody to publish the game, so they had no way of releasing it back then. They ended up canceling it, and they moved on. Well, now that we have Limited Run and other companies like that, I guess they were willing to publish the game. So WayForward went back to the game, finished it, and now a physical copy is actually being officially released through Limited Run. I think the game's like 60 bucks. It's not cheap, but it is coming out. This is still the era of Shantae being a Metroidvania. I know they did stray away from it at one point. We're going to be talking about another Shantae game directly after this, where the style of it has changed, not just graphically, but how the game works. In this game, it is a Metroidvania, and the way that you will traverse through parts of the world later on is by being able to change into different animals. You can change into 3 different ones. You can change into a monkey, an elephant, or a mermaid. The way you do it is by belly dancing. There is a button in Shantae that is dedicated to dancing. That's all she does. And when you release the button during a specific move of the dance, she will turn into one of the animals. They are tied to one of the moves. This is one thing that changed going forwards, and it obviously changed for a specific reason. And there's some things that Shantae does, at least still in this era, that I don't know if I've seen many other games do. One of them is the dancing. I don't know, I just think it's so funny and charming. Another thing is that Risky's Revenge, and I'm pretty sure the original Shantae as well, they not only are side-scrolling games, I don't know what you call it, but they're like dimension-scrolling games. They not only scroll left and right, they scroll forward and back, and it is a very cool idea. Sure, when you look at the map, it can kind of like make your eyeballs glaze over because it's kind of hard to initially take in what you're looking at. But it's another thing that this game does that is very unique. Now you have to keep in mind with both of the Shantae games I'm going to talk about, and it might be all of them in the series. I've only played these 2 so far all the way through, and I just started playing the original one for Game Boy Color. However, these require a hard save. If you go around exploring the world for an hour and you die, you go back to your last save. There is no autosave happening in this, not even in the director's cut. The world is set up in a way where it is constantly going to be kind of putting the save in your face. So it's not like you're going to completely forget about it. You will pass the save guy multiple times on your trip, no matter really where you go. Just anytime you see him, save. One gripe I do have with this is it allows you to warp all around the map, so you don't always have to walk everywhere. However, there is no warp to the center of town, so anytime you want to go to town to either level up or buy stuff from the store or do whatever you want there, you have to warp outside of town and walk in. Why? Just put a warp statue in the middle of town. Why? It's so dumb. Just put one in there, especially in the director's cut. Just add one in there. Who cares? Anyway, that's really the only annoyance I've had with this. You do have the warping, but there is still a lot of backtracking in this game. The developers created a world that they liked, and they wanted you to see it, and you are going to see it multiple times. There's different places to explore, there's different areas to find. Risky's Revenge is not very long, and it's kind of like a perfect handheld experience for a Shantae game, because you still get the whole world, you still get the different parts that you'll access at different points in the game. You have the dungeons, you have the bosses. Just have a nice and well put together game that isn't going to take you forever to get through. And now for the other Shantae game. This is Half Genie Hero. You can tell immediately that this game looks different just from the art style. Before we had pixelated graphics, now we have more of a hand-drawn style. The colors are very bright as well. Let's be real, whoever was the art director of this game needs to go to horny jail. I'm not going to say that Shantae is obscene, but I will say that this is a game series all about ass and titties. Ass, titties, titties. The physical version of Half Genie Hero is called the Ultimate Edition, and it has all the DLC included on it. So if you do want to play this, then that's probably the way of doing it. Some of the changes for Half Genie Hero, in my opinion, take away from the identity of Shantae, especially what I was talking about with the previous game, Risky's Revenge. The dimension scrolling is gone, which is one of the most unique things of the series. Another thing is that the dancing has changed. You can see what it looks like now, and I said some of the things changed for specific reasons, and the dancing changed here because you can turn into, I don't know, like 12 or 16 different animals or beings, I guess. I don't like it as much. However, this is one of the things that I was saying changed for a reason. Before, we could only turn into 3 different animals, so the loop on the dance was relatively short. So obviously it had to be changed, otherwise the dance would be a minute long. Some of the new things you can change into, a crab, a spider, a tree. Oh, you could turn into a bat. So yeah, there's all kinds of stuff, and they all are able to be used for different things. They all can traverse in a different way. This still has elements of a Metroidvania game, however the world is not interconnected like it was before. Half Genie Hero is not mission-based, but it is like area-based. Nothing is connected this time around. That being said, there is still a ton of backtracking to do. Again, the developers made this world and they want you to see it. However, there are 2 things added to Half Genie Hero that were not in Risky's Revenge. One of them is the ability to warp through a level. So if the level is 3 different parts, if you just need to get something in the second part or the third part, you don't have to play through the full first part of the level. You can skip to the second, get whatever you need, and then they gave you a whistle, which you can use to then exit the level, and it saves whatever you did in there. They understand that there's backtracking here. They understand that people don't want to be doing the same thing over and over again, so they put mechanics and items in the game to help adjust for that. And even though they put in some mechanics to smooth things out how the game is played, this still is a hard save game. There is no autosave yet again. I didn't like Half Genie Hero as much as Risky's Revenge. It's still a good game. It's still like the core of Shantae is there. It's just different. It's like modernized, and I just preferred the graphics and the charm and the style of the previous one. And this also becomes a collectathon, so every area has whatever 10 or 12 or 15 things that you can get there, and if you want to get the true ending of the game, you're going to have to get everything in all of the levels. When I was playing this, I kept thinking of the Jim Gaffigan joke about Mexican food.
What is a burrito? Tortilla with cheese, meat, or vegetable. But then what is a tostada? Tortilla with cheese, meat, or vegetable. Well then what is, look, it's all the same!
Now, I've only played all the way through 2 of these Shantae games, and I've played a bit of the Game Boy Color one, but that's what this series feels to me. Like, the world is always reused, the characters are reused, the transformations are reused, the attacking is reused, the items are reused, and they're just kind of like pulling them together in different combinations to create a different game. All the characters are pretty much here from Risky's Revenge. There's a couple new ones, and there's new enemies and stuff, but a lot of the stuff is going to feel very samey as it did before. I still like this game. I think they did a good job with it. It's not my favorite, but I am compelled to beat all 5 or 6 of the games when the other one finally drops. Do I recommend Half Genie Hero? If you want more Shantae, yeah, I'm not going to recommend it over Risky's Revenge, but there is tons to do here, and once you get through the main game, you can start going to the DLC, and there's a bunch more stuff to explore. SteelRising is my favorite game that I beat in February. It was one of the free games from having a PlayStation Network subscription along with Foam Stars and Rollerdrome. And I loved it so much that I beat it twice back to back. This is one that I've been meaning to play for a while. It is a Souls-like that takes place during the French Revolution, and you play as a robot who has been brought to life with a human consciousness. I love when Souls-like games put an era spin on them. Bloodborne went with Victorian England, and they can create such a unique environment from that. I wasn't expecting to love this game as much as I did. Now, this is more of a by-the-books Souls-like. We're going to talk about one later on that breaks the mold of really how the Souls games work, but this is pretty much by the books. So if that interests you and you don't really like it when, like if you played Nioh when they have different stances and they have a bunch of different ideas involved in the game, like key pulses and stuff like that, You don't have to worry about any of that stuff, but there is actually a cooldown in this as well that's kind of like a key pulse. Anyway, whatever, not to get off topic. Some of the bosses in this game are boring, but the exploring felt just like a Souls game to me. It made me feel just like it did when I was playing Demon Souls. You get some upgrades later, like a grappling hook and an air dash to unlock different parts of the levels later on. And when I got those, my immediate thought was like, wow, the devs really must have did a lot of testing to make sure that you can't just break out of bounds or get past areas in ways that they don't expect you to. But no, you can. This game gets broken immediately. If you've ever watched a Dark Souls speedrun or a Sekiro speedrun, you will know really just how broken those games are when it comes to exploiting a lot of it. This game is almost just as bad, if not worse. There is a great AGDQ speedrun of SteelRising from January 2024. It gets beaten just about 40 minutes. Really great run, really impressive, fun to watch. You can just go to YouTube and find it. It's one of my favorite runs that I've seen ever on AGDQ. This did get a New Game Plus mode patched into it at some point, and it's one that doesn't just give enemies more health and have them hit harder. It's a whole redesigned thing. When you play the original game of this, you can level your weapons up to level 5. In the New Game Plus, you can level them up to level 9. Also, you have ring slots in this game called modules, and you can level them up to level 3. So if you have a module that is level 1, you can only use a ring, what the equivalent of a ring that is level 1. When you get it to level 2, you can use level 1, or level 2 you get it, and then you level up to 3. In the main game, you can level all 4 of your modules up to level 3. In New Game Plus, you can level them up to level 4, and they give you even stronger modules or rings or whatever you want to think of it as to play the game with. One of my favorites was called Double or Quits, which had you do double damage, but you take double damage. And if you were already a strength build up to then and you were using like a heavy weapon, you were taking pretty much everything out in one hit and bosses were going down in only a few hits. It added quite a bit to the game. And again, it wasn't just like a boring New Game Plus where the enemies just did more damage and hit harder. They retooled the whole thing, and good for them. It worked. It kept me entertained. This does need at least another patch. There are times when it runs really poorly on the PS5 and it crashed on me multiple times. Luckily, this does use the Souls save system, meaning that it's always constantly saving, so even if it crashes, there's not really a lot to lose. It did get an additional DLC storyline, which I bought when it was on sale, and I'll play through during my next New Game Plus Plus run. I don't know, this game just did it for me, and if you love Souls games, definitely give this one a shot. Oh, Enchanted Portals, the Cuphead from Wish.com. Despite what people say, this isn't the worst game ever made. Music's good, animations are quirky, and there's some genuinely funny and charming parts throughout. It also isn't anywhere near the level of Cuphead. And yeah, I'm going to say Cuphead like 1,000 times while talking about Enchanted Portals. There's 6 levels, and unlike Cuphead where it splits out the level styles where you'll either have a run and gun level or a boss level, this does combine them together. So it'll be a run and gun for 2 or 3 sections, and then you'll have a big boss at the end. One new mechanic here is giving you 3 types of shots. You have a fire shot, an ice shot, and whatever the hell the green shot's supposed to be. Some enemies can be killed by any of them, and some of them will only die if they get shot with a specific one. They have a force field around them in the color that corresponds to one of the shots that you have. I did have to change some of the button inputs to work for me, but to be fair, I had to do that with Cuphead as well. Neither of their native controller layouts felt natural to me. For a company who wanted to make a game like Cuphead, they didn't put in a crouch button for some reason. Also, there's a special attack timer that takes 60 seconds to fill up. You can see the progress around your face in the top left-hand corner of the screen. And when it fills up, you can use your special, which makes your shots bigger and more powerful. And I appreciate that there's something like this in place, however, it works counterintuitively to the one in Cuphead. In Cuphead, your special fills just from attacking, and then there will be pink enemies, objects, and bullets that are sent your way during the level. Parry them and it'll fill up your special even quicker. The game's rewarding you for being more aggressive, taking risks, and overall just getting better at it. The one in Enchanted Portals just fills up on a set timer. It doesn't matter if you just stand there or 360 no-scope every enemy in the level. Some of the boss fights are really short, and in between the phases, your special timer is reset. So there are boss fights that if you're better at the game, you will never get to use your special attack. There's a set of trophies for just beating the game on normal or easy, and then there's another set dedicated to beating it on insane. And get this, the insane run requires you to finish the entire game in a single life, and all of the hearts to refill your health have been removed. And if you die at any point, you go back to the beginning of the game. Surprisingly, the Platinum Trophy is not 0%, it is 0.1%, meaning at least one person on planet Earth has completed the insane run. Wild Guns Reloaded, a game that I have a love-hate relationship with, and Hunt Down, a game that I can't recommend enough. Both have trophies like this. The two big differences are, for one, they're amazing games, and two, you can play the levels one at a time in various orders and have infinite continues to try your luck over and over again. They're still brutally hard and barely anyone has completed them, however, it is doable with enough practice, and again, they're attached to great games. So do I recommend Enchanted Portals? No. If you wanted to play a game like this, you'll just go play Cuphead. And its DLC has finally been released, A Delicious Last Course, so you can now play the game in its entirety. So Haunted House is definitely the surprise of the month for me. This released at a budget price of $20. I grabbed it a few months later for about $10. And Haunted House is an Atari game originally from 1982. And over the years, they've made a few more games in the series, like the 2010 game that released on the Wii. And there's a 2014 game called Cryptic Graves that was apparently so bad that it's even delisted on Steam. In 2022, there was a reimagining of the original game for the Atari 50th anniversary celebration, and then you got this one in 2023. This is a roguelike where you have to explore 3 floors of a haunted house, defeating a boss at the end of each, and then rescuing your 4 friends from the basement. You have to do both in combination. You have to explore the 3 floors, and you have to rescue all 4 of your friends. You can't beat this game without doing both of them. Once you've done that, you'll take out the final boss and you get left on a cliffhanger. The music is great in this game, the sound effects are pretty creepy. It kind of reminds me of a modern 3D roguelike version of the Game Boy Advance Monster House game that I reviewed a long time ago, even if they don't really have all that much in common. There's not a ton of stuff going on here. I think there's about half a dozen room types that you'll need to clear, like burning chains or just killing all the enemies in it. You're really just walking around and trying to get experience, gold, and the best weapons or healing for when you get to the boss. You can tiptoe around to not disturb sleeping enemies and can instantly kill them by sneaking up behind them and burning them with your lantern. Haunted House isn't very difficult, but it does need at least one more update in my opinion that it's probably not going to get. To sneak up on some of the enemies, you gotta be all up in their business, and when others are sitting up against a wall or a chair, you can't get behind them to insta-kill them. Adjusting these would just make the game a bit smoother to play, and these issues caused me to die quite a few times. And remember, this is a roguelike, so whenever you die, you're going to have to play the entire floor over again, but at least you'll hang on to your experience to upgrade your character. So if you beat floor 1, you can continue to floor 2, or you can leave, and then a door will be opened to where you can use that door instead of the main door, and you will go to floor 2 instead of floor 1. You don't have to replay any of the floors that you don't want to. However, if you decide to leave and go back to the beginning, all of the items you've accumulated are gone, and I think you might lose your gold as well. However, you do keep your experience. This is one of the only games I've ever seen to actually have a 0% platinum trophy, as in no one on planet Earth has it yet, at least on the PlayStation 5. Even a borderline impossible game like Enchanted Portals and a completely broken one like Cobra Kai 2 have a 0.1% platinum. The reason it has a 0 platinum percentage is because there are 3 people looking for lost items. The chef is looking for the lost kitchen utensils, the maid is looking for the lost cats, and then the tech guy is looking for the lost Atari cartridges. All of them are looking for 20 each. And I believe what people online said is there is a chance of 1 spawning on any floor. So if you go to floor 1, there is a potential of 1 being spawned of the 3. If you play through the entire game, that means you have to play through 4 floors. That means you can find a total of 4. That's the max possible amount that you can get. You have to find 60 of them. So it's just you have to grind the game. You have to just keep playing and playing and playing in order to find all of them. If that interests you, you could be the first person on planet Earth to have the PS5 Platinum Trophy. If not, just come back to it every now and then, do a quick run, and then walk away from it. Do I recommend Haunted House? Yeah, definitely. Pick it up while it's cheap now. Play through it in October to vary up your Halloween playlist. And lastly, the final game that I beat in February 2024, the second Souls-like, is Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy Origin. This game was published by Square, and it is made from one of their biggest properties. However, it was actually developed by Team Ninja, who is no stranger to Souls-like games. They did Nioh, they did Nioh 2, they did Wulong, and most recently they did Rise of Ronin. And back 20 years ago, they were responsible for the reboot of Ninja Gaiden. Stranger of Paradise is apparently a retelling of the original Final Fantasy, and although I recognized quite a few things going through the game, areas, enemies, all that kind of stuff, by the end I had no clue what was even going on with the story. There's time travel at one point. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. None of these games are reliant on stories. This game is about the 4 Warriors of Light, right? And you fight with a party of 3, and there are 5 characters to choose from. Why? I don't know. This one is mission-based, and everything is very linear. There might be a point or two where you stray off the path, but really you're not going to be exploring huge, gigantic areas. It's a very specific path that you're going to be taking, and that's the game. So Stranger of Paradise plays by Sekiro rules. You can kill enemies and bosses by either depleting their health or their posture. Both are viable options, and depending on what boss or enemy you're fighting, one of them might be easier for you to deplete than the other one. When I was talking about SteelRising, I was saying that was a more kind of by-the-book Souls-like, but Stranger of Paradise probably presents like 6 new mechanics, and you're going to have to understand and master some of them, or just the first boss of the game is going to just pound you into the ground constantly. There is a difficulty selection here, so you can play on easy or you can play on hard, and eventually you will unlock a chaos mode and you can play on that if you want. So people who feel like the Souls games aren't approachable with the difficulty options might find this easier to get into than your average Souls game. There are times that I like this game and there are times that I hate it. I don't know if there was ever a single time when I was playing this that I actually loved it. I think that's because what this feels like to me, and I'm not sure if it is, but it's just what it feels like, is that it was originally designed to be a live service, and at some point, due to money or personnel or time, it was pivoted to what we have here. Now, this is a complete game, but you're going to start noticing kind of cracks in the picture as you go through. One of them is that there is quite a bit of reused assets here. There are times you're going to go through a level and be like, okay, yeah, that was new, that felt different. And then there will be a side quest that is just pretty much that level you just played in reverse. And there'll be a boss at the end that you've already fought at some point. Like, they don't even just change the color. Instead of fighting like a red ninja originally, they don't even make it a blue ninja now. They would just leave it as a red ninja. They didn't do anything. Another thing is the amount of loot that gets dropped in the missions. It is unbelievable. You've never seen anything like it. You will play a mission and you will leave with 200 pieces of loot. Between weapons and armor and rings, you will leave with hundreds of them. It kind of messes up the idea of ever upgrading something, because if you have something that's like level 100 and you can use your resources to level it up, but the second you start the next mission, you get another sword that's level 110, what's the point of leveling up the one that you just have now? You're just going to be throwing it away in a minute. The nice thing is because there's so much loot, there is an option to just give all the characters essentially the best stuff that you have in your inventory, and then you can just scrap all the rest of the stuff after the end of every level or the beginning of the next one, and next time you go to the smith person, you just dismantle all of it for whatever elements they're worth. Another thing, the bosses are so damage spongy. They are done well though, and all of them have 2 phases. A lot of them are these huge, gigantic, hulking beasts, and some of them can be pretty fun to take down. When you think about Dark Souls or Elden Ring or whatever, the enemies that you fight in the beginning of the game, they are not like endgame enemies. Sure, there might be one that gets souped up to be a boss later on, especially something in Elden Ring where there's just bosses everywhere in that game. Think about in the original Dark Souls, right in the very beginning of the game, you fight hollows, right? At the end of the game, you're not fighting those same hollows because there are black knights or silver knights that they can put in your way, or things that are just bigger and are actually going to present some type of challenge. There will be beginning game characters like a bat in the end game. There was a time where I was getting towards the end and there was just a bat in a cave, and it was, leveled whatever because it was somewhere on par with my characters. It took us like 8 hits to take it down. And I was like, this is almost hilarious if it wasn't pathetic that this stupid ass bat is taking so many hits to kill. The CPU characters are legit the dumbest I've ever seen in a game, almost ever, with the exception of Triforce Heroes, just wearing the crown of the absolute worst. The game, it has co-op. You can play with 2 other people and you can roll around in your group of 3 and just wreak havoc. However, if you're playing with the CPU characters, there are times that they will just stand there in the battle next to the boss and they won't do anything. They will pretty much never ever revive you either. They'll just stand there and let you die. Some people say that the dialogue and everything here is too cringe for them. I'm fine with it. I'm okay with the cringe. I don't really care. Stranger of Paradise does have one of my favorite recent cutscenes in it.
Remain a dream so long as I live. Who I am, I don't give a fuck who you are.
Do I recommend Stranger of Paradise? If you have 2 other friends who are willing to play the entire game with you, yes. If you can't find anybody, I don't know. You can try it if you want, but there's a bunch of other Souls-likes out there. Tales of Iron is one that I loved. Code Vein is another one that I love that I don't know if anybody talks about anymore, but I like that game a lot. The thing about the Team Ninja stuff is, in my opinion, it's so much more difficult than the FromSoft games. Even Sekiro, people might tell you that Sekiro is the most difficult, but every single one of the Tecmo games that comes out, the Team Ninja ones, every single one just pounds me into the ground. So those are the 6 games that I beat in February 2024. I'd love to hear what you played, finished, or still want to play. I'm going to continue making these monthly, and I'll eventually get around to doing it for January as well. That's it for today. Stay nerdy. I'm out.
Getting your nerd on, getting your nerd on, getting your nerd on.
I got a raging nerd on.